Welcome to the Setting the Edge podcast. I am here joined with my buddy, Brian Gauthier, as always, at Brian Gauthier7.
So
I am Ronnie Vaughn, at VaughnR16 on Twitter. And we have a guest here today from the Twitter Daily Fantasy World. This is at Jim Dean King. Jim, how are you today? Welcome to the show, man.
Hey guys, how we doing? Thanks for having me out here today. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, love it.
Again soon.
So,
come follow me at King.
There you go. Awesome, man. We'll plug that again as we move along. Quick question: who is your football team that you root for?
Unfortunately, I'm living in Massachusetts, but I'm a Giants fan.
Oh, Jesus Christ. We're both Patriot fans here. So.
A lot of angry Pats fans around here.
What part of Massachusetts? You know, West Mass, East Mass, Cape Cod, Boston. What are you at?
Like 20 minutes west of Boston, Framingham.
All right, cool. Oh, Framingham. All right. I got family up in Waltham. We're from Connecticut, so we're New England guys ourselves here.
Not too far.
Yeah, not far. All right, so let's start with a little bit of recap of last week's our picks. I'm going to start with my picks. Talk about how well I went. Yeah, so I went 4-2 gambling. So I hit the over in the Oakland New Orleans game at 51. That was easy money in my opinion. It was just going to be a shootout, and that was another great game for fantasy wise. I targeted that. I had Brandon Cooks all the way around. I was just caking off of that. I got trapped in this Kansas City San Diego game. I had Kansas City minus 6.5. Kansas City started off slow and just could not get it done. They ended up winning, which was fine for a lot of people who took them in Survivor. I believe our buddy Mikey Bryan had Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken.
He did have Kansas City.
He snuck that one out. The next game I lost, I had Buffalo +3 at Baltimore. I walked right into a freaking trap on that one. I lapped up everything about Buffalo, and they looked like shit. Shady McCoy was all right, and that was the only positive aspect from that. Baltimore looked like the typical annoying Baltimore team, and hopefully we don't have to deal with them. Next game I bet, I had Jacksonville +5 against Green Bay. I'm jagging off to the Jags this year. I'm going to continue to ride with them as much as possible this year. They almost blew it, but they were in it to the end, which was great. And I finished off hot. I had the over 51 in Detroit-Indy game. That just no defense on Indy, no defense on Detroit. You got two gunslingers, Stafford and Luck. That was, once again, easy money, in my opinion. And then the easiest money of all was Pats +9 at Arizona. That's a ridiculous line. I think we can all agree here. +9 too much for a Bill Belichick team.
I would have to agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jim, do you want to talk about your cash game lineup? I saw that you cashed. I saw you did very well. You want to break it down for me a little bit?
Yeah, no problem. So I usually run with 3 different slates. I do the Sunday only, the Sunday, Monday late, the 4:05 start, and then I also do the full slate, of course. I actually had probably can't get any better. I won every single contest in all 3 slates, both cash and GPP. So hell of a way to start off the season, that's for sure.
Yep.
But the full slate, I'm pretty upset, but I was expecting a little more, honestly, from a few different games. I went with Eli, Manning, and Beckham stack, and obviously Beckham didn't produce as I think everybody expected. So he had 4 catches for 73 yards, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but when you're paying over $9K, you don't want to get 9 points, obviously.
Absolutely.
So that was definitely a little bit disappointing. On the other hand, I went with Brandon Cooks. He was actually only, I want to say like 2-3% owned in a lot of my cash games, and he went off for 30. That was one of the big plays that really moved me way up the ladder. I was actually pretty surprised that not as many people had him rolling out there. Also went with Amari Cooper. I liked that matchup, and he performed pretty well. I think he's going to be a monster all season long, and with a price tag around $7K, I feel like he was a must for me, especially, against the Saints, any top dog receiver you should be looking at for sure. So Cooper ended up with 18.7 points. I think he was one of the first guys I locked in for the night. Running backs, I went with D'Angelo Williams as my RB1. Absolutely loved him, and he produced in a big way. I'm actually really interested to see what happens when Le'Veon comes back. I mean, if Williams is producing at this high of a rate, is it possibly going to, cut into some of his touches? I think that's going to be interesting to see. And then my other running back was Spencer Ware, which I think just about everybody had to go with in that situation. And he had a monster game. So that was my cash line. Like I said, it was an easy cash. I finished with 151.
Ooh, there you go.
And was pretty much right at the top of all the 50-50 lines.
Yeah, I would say you're
probably
top 5% for that, for sure. That's what's up. Yeah, so
that was my cash line.
There you go. Yeah, and GPPs, I did all right in my GPPs, and I also stunk in mine. So I'm not going to really, dive into, why I decided to throw out, Will Fuller and then, Tavon Austin, a different one. It's just, I throw bullets in the dark with GPPs, but they're calculated. I was really hoping Tavon Austin Rams would pair up and he runs one back and, the Monday night crowd is hooping and hollering. I like storylines in GPPs, but my cash game was relatively similar. I rolled with the Derek Carr, Amari Cooper stack. I was a little worried throughout the entire game, but then the 2-point conversions for Derek Carr really bailed him out. That's pretty much another touchdown. And then he threw one to Cooper, which was just awesome because he was missing the touchdown. I rolled with Shady McCoy. He ended up getting me 15 points. He's the only, shining light for the Bills. He was the only thing for offense, and he was 4% owned, 15 points. I'll take it. I had Lamar Miller. He had 13.7. He ran for the most yards out of everyone going into Monday, and then, just didn't get a touchdown. So sucks to miss that one out, but he had 13, so it got value from me. I actually faded Spencer Ware because there was too much. It was so much chalk. It was dust in my nose, and I just couldn't do it. But I did not avoid the other chalk, because if you avoided Antonio Brown and Spencer Ware completely, you're probably beat unless you had the entire Saints game involved. But I had Antonio Brown, 28.6 points. Why not, right? Duh, that's a duh for me. I talked myself back into Allen Hurns after talking myself out of him on the show. He got 9.5 points. One of these days he's going to get the touchdowns. Didn't completely blow up in my face. Amari Cooper, solid 18.7, as I spoke of earlier. I went Martellus Bennett. As a Pats fan, I was a little, I wasn't upset because he looked damn good blocking out there. So that doesn't translate to anything for fantasy. But if I could take one thing out of that, he looked damn good blocking out there. So at least he was on the field. I can't.
Yeah, take what you can get.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. He got 3 points. Who cares? There was a bunch of busts across the board for people. People paid up for AP, Todd Gurley, etc. And then to close it out, I always make sure kicker and defense are solid for me. With Matt Bryant and a shootout with Tampa Bay, 10 points, solid all the way through. And then I had the Eagles against the Browns. I thought RG3 was going to die going into the game anyway, and I was right. I was really hoping for maybe a kick return or punt return from Sproles. He's always dancing out there, and they were pretty low owned as well. I ended up with 131. I was in the top 20%, 15% of most of my 50-50s. Hit one of my GPPs, and it was pretty much just a stack of the Saints players, Raiders players, Detroit, and I had Will Fuller in there, I think, or something like that for cheap. Solid week all the way around. Want to build off of that. And now we're going to get into this entire slate. Yes, the Bills-Jets game is going on. Spoiler alert, I took the Jets +1. There wasn't really much I liked from fantasy-wise in that game, in my opinion. Thursday night games are gross. I don't usually like playing them, but sometimes it's nice to play those when there's questionable injuries with star players and everyone gets afraid of them. So it's always nice to toss one in there. I did not, but we're going to get started here with Miami at New England. The spread is New England is favored by 6.5. The over-under here I see is 42. Brian, kick us off here. What do you got for me for this game?
All right, so for this game, I'm not really. I don't really feel any Pats receivers. As you know, it's so sporadic. Nothing's ever consistent with them, and you never really know who to rely on. I'm even less high on. He's after week one, it was kind of tough with he didn't really show anything. So, but what I am high on in this game is Jarvis. If you go with Jarvis, I think he's gonna get you a ton of catches, even against Malcolm Butler. I still think you got to roll with him.
Tim, what do you got for me on this game?
This one, I love Arian Foster this week. I know last week, outside of the 50-yard catch, he didn't have a whole lot going on as yards per carry wise, but I'm just happy to see him healthy through it. I was a guy who grabbed him mid-round in my season long, and I'm honestly figuring, hey, if he gets me 6 or 8 good games a year and has hurt the rest, fine. So while he is healthy, I'm going to definitely attack that in DFS this week as well. I think he has a big week. He's really, honestly, the only one for Miami. I'm not as high on Jarvis as you are. Just pretty well known for shutting down the number one. And I could see him doing that this week with Landry, as I don't really see anyone else on that team really being able to do too much against the Pats defense. So outside of Foster, that's really all I got.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm looking at Foster and Daly as well. I'm a little skeptical, but he's too good of a player not to get the touches. Brian, here's a stat for you. Jarvis Landry has 0 touchdowns in 4 games against the Patriots.
Boom.
There it is. But you know what? At the same time, Jarvis Landry could pull down 14 catches. So I'm not touching him. He's actually on my avoid list personally. On the Pats, if I'm looking at anything daily-wise, I like the defense, 4.5. Not really on FanDuel, not too bad. And maybe a little Chris Hogan action if you're really feeling something in the GPP, 4.7. Cheap exposure to maybe an offense that will decide to let Jimmy loose a little bit more. And I'm taking the Pats minus 6.5 as one of my official picks. One touch, and I've locked them all in now. So if they change, that's not my fault. The Pats minus 6.5, they win by a touchdown or 10. If it was in Miami, different story. I don't like playing down there, as we know, Brian, as Pats fans. They're home. I love it. Moving to the next game. This is going to be a bloodbath. Literally, there's going to be blood everywhere on the field. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh minus 3.5. Over under is 48.5. There was a tip I saw. What was it? The refs are actually going to be closely watching this game. I mean, shouldn't they be watching it anyway? In my opinion, I love watching this game. Get me some early morning early afternoon Andy Dalton action. What do you got for this game, Jim?
This one, I think. I definitely want to take a look at Eli Rogers for tournaments. I feel like he's going to be an interesting guy for the first couple weeks at least. Like I said, until Bell comes back, I think he's going to see a decent amount of targets again. I think he's got a pretty limited upside overall, but I think he'd be a solid play for getting a couple extra big money guys in your lineup. D'Angelo Williams again. Thinking about rolling out him again as my top running back. I don't love it, but I feel like with the amount of touches he's going to get, he's going to get the point. He's going to have his opportunities, and it's just too good of an offense to not get some piece of it at least. I am debating back and forth right now whether I want to go with Antonio Brown or not. I feel like Beckham's percentage is going to be ridiculous, but he could also have 200 yards. So that's going to be a tough decision, I think, for a lot of people deciding which top flight receiver to go with. So overall, I say D'Angelo for sure, and then Rodgers maybe for tournament play. As for the Bengals, watching AJ Green dominate Revis last week was I felt bad for Revis. It was just pathetic. Green literally did whatever he wanted. I think I read this today, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he had 10 catches on 10 targets against Revis, and that's just silly. I mean, if he's going to be doing that, I want a lot of it, and I want it now. You know what I mean? So A.J. Green will be my go-to for the Bengals, if anything. Otherwise, I'm going to avoid the running game, avoid Dalton. So I definitely say Green would be my only Cincy guy, and that's pretty much it for that game. Over/under is interesting, but I didn't bite on it.
Yeah, typically in this matchup, the games are a lot more slow paced, and really, like as I mentioned, they grind it out. So 48.5 is looking. I'm leaning under. It's not one of my official picks, but I might snag on it if it keeps going up. Ryan, welcome to the show. You're here now. What do you got on Cincinnati and Pittsburgh?
Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, there's one really interesting note that I'd like to point out. Jesse James is minimum price at tight end. Honestly, when I look at building my cash lineups, I only see two real threats or two real options that I want to plug in. And then I also see one other guy who I think all the chalk's going to be on that I'm not really considering a lot. But Jesse James is one of my guys who's on my short list at tight end this week. Typically in this matchup for Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, Ben likes to go to the tight end a lot. And having Jesse James as the number one option, along with everything else in that offense, I think that Jesse James's production is going to drastically outperform his 4,500 mark. To the Eli Rogers point, I just want to I understand the love completely. I like him a lot in tournaments this week. For cash games, I'd say the threat to his production isn't as much Le'Veon Bell coming back as Marcus Wheaton coming back. However, 1 week of Marcus Wheaton coming back and not being, quote unquote, the number 2 man, and Eli Rogers is, as Jim pointed out, a fantastic option. D'Angelo Williams, I'm probably not going to plug him in just because this game I think is going to be a grinded out, just ugly game like every Cincinnati-Pittsburgh game is. But other than that, those are pretty much all my options, and I don't really have any reads on betting any spreads or over-unders in this.
Yeah, I like Jesse James as well. There's, as you said, there's only 3 tight ends really I'm looking at this week. And there's chalk dust up in my nose for one of them, and I'm staring. He's in my lineup right now. We'll get to him a little bit later. But I like Jesse James at 4.5. I have no problem with playing Antonio Brown. I have no problem with playing D'Angelo Williams. I personally despise A.J. Green, but there's no argument I have, really, especially after torching Darrelle Revis. There's a Jets fan that lives right there, and I'm pretty sure he didn't drop a ball when the ball was tossed at him, so I think you're correct on that, Jim. Out of the rest, everyone else, never touch the Bengals running game. That's just a death sentence, in my opinion. Andy Dalton, 1 o'clock game. If it wasn't Pittsburgh, you can toss it out in a GPP, but he only performs in a 1 o'clock game. And if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Andy Dalton was a fraud in the spotlight, so I think people are finally learning that. So I'm not playing the Red Rocket at all, but I'm leaning under. I have a couple good plays in this game. It's going to be a good game to watch overall, though. Moving to the next game, we have the Tennessee Titans at the Detroit Lions. Right now, I see Detroit at -6. Over-under at 47.5. I'll kick this off here. High over-under here. So I like either the kickers, if you're looking in DFS, 4.6 and 4.5. I forget who's who, but usually I like to go cheap kickers in cash game. You can't go. I don't see going wrong with a kicker and a high over/under game. Delaney Walker, that's my boy. No matter what, if you want to play him in cash game, play him all you want. He's going to get you 6 to 7 catches, potentially 60 yards or so. Mariota rolling out, tossing it out to Delaney is just only become more of a common theme. And I also like Eric Ebron at 5.5. Players I am not looking at all. I am off Tajay Sharp completely. 6.0, way too much. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Darius Slay is going to be on him all game. He's not going to do anything. And Rashard Matthews at 5.3. Don't bite. It's cheap. Don't bite. Don't do it. He's not going to do anything. Not a talented player. And this is actually one of my official picks, under 47.5. I think Tennessee starts off hot. I'm going game script, game theory here. Tennessee is going to start off with the ball. They're going to grind it down. They're so-called like run first, but it's like a there's another word like exuberant rushing attack or something along the lines of that. They're going to slow the game down. Detroit's not going to get in rhythm early. I think the total is going to go under here. Detroit's going to end up winning, in my opinion. But I think under 47.5 is the move and the play here. Ryan, what do you got for this game?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going with the under in this game, and I'm staying away from Tajay Sharp. He's not worth the money at all. He put up decent numbers week one, but it's not worth spending anything over that. I'm staying away from Tennessee running backs, too. I think the front seven for Detroit is too good. And DeMarco, yeah, he had a good week one, but breakout year, he's a spotty player at best.
Mm-hmm.
I love Marvin Jones and Golden Tate in this game, even Theo Riddick. I'm staying away from Amir Abdullah, but any Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, Theo Riddick, those are the big three to look for in this game.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at Theo Riddick myself, but I don't know. I don't have good luck with Detroit running backs ever. Jim, what do you got for me?
I am actually a huge Theo Riddick guy. He won me a good amount of money last week. I had him at 1% ownership. Put up 25 points. I think I've been talking about him on Twitter a lot. I have him projected for 90 or more catches on the season. I think he's just going to be a huge piece of that offense. I was thrilled to see him grab 7 carries. May not seem like a lot, but for a guy like him, who I was only expecting a couple, 2 or 3, I'll take the extra work all day. I think the Jim Bob Cooter offense is gonna see both running backs featured a lot in the passing game, but I think Riddick is definitely the guy to go for there. So he's certainly on my radar as a quality lower priced option. I love him. Marvin Jones, I'm also a big fan of. Golden Tate, not as much. If I was going to pick from the two, it would have to be Jones. I think he's got the big play ability where Tate is going to see more short routes and whatnot. Is probably my number 2 or 3 tight end for the week. I like him a lot I think he's at 5,500. I don't think you can go wrong there. He had himself a solid game last week. On the Tennessee side of things, won't even think about it. No interest whatsoever in anyone on that side of the field. I'm just not going there. No reason to.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Too many other solid options elsewhere to even think about it. It's just not for me this week.
All right.
That's about it for that game for me.
Ryan, what do you got?
Looking at this game, when I look at Tennessee, when I wrote up the stats of the week article up on the website, look at Tajay Sharp's 11 targets last week, and on FanDuel, I completely agree at 6,000. I'm not paying 6,000 for him when I can get other options. On DraftKings, however, he's only, I think, 4.1 thousand. And for a guy who got 11 targets last week and in a full point PPR over at DraftKings, I think you got to really give him a long, hard look. That Detroit defense did not look good by any stretch of the imagination against Indianapolis. That's pretty much the only thing I'm looking for there. And then on the other side of the ball for Detroit, Matthew Stafford is a startable quarterback every single week with Jim Bob Cooter. I mean, just looking at the numbers since the offensive coordinator switch, and they've told just about the entire story where he's an elite quarterback. I believe I heard the number that he is the 3rd highest scoring quarterback behind only Cam Newton and Russell Wilson, 2 guys who are also adding points with their legs since the offensive coordinator switch was made. So he's one of my guys who I've listed as a cash play option at quarterback. Well, at each position, I've pretty much narrowed it down to 5 guys who I really think I can plug and play in a winning cash lineup. And Matthew Stafford is one of those guys. Other than that, I don't have anybody from this game. You brought up a good point about Delaney Walker. He's just Mr. Reliable in that offense. But pretty much everything has been touched upon in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have a couple different guys at quarterback, and Matt Stafford at 7.8, and you know he's going to throw the ball upwards around 40 times. It's always a positive look. And this is my opinion. I won't be playing him. I just think the game script is going to dictate a slower paced game. But I'm also really buying into my own bets here, so that's how I just start losing money. But that's how it goes. Yeah, under 47.5 is one of my official picks, though. That's for certain. The next game, we got the Baltimore Ravens going out to Cleveland. I have Cleveland as +7 dogs, and the over-under here is 42.5. Ryan, we're going to shoot it right back to you. Tell me what you like about this game.
With this game, my stat of the week last week was for Baltimore. They had 34 pass attempts and 10 players with a catch, and also with the target. Everybody who had a target had a reception in that game. That just scares the living hell out of me. No idea what's going to go on there. I'm just not really looking for anybody. I mean, somebody's probably going to put up production looking at what happened last week in that game for Cleveland against Philadelphia. But then on the other side of the ball for Cleveland, breaking down the blackboard with where the chalk's going to be this week, I think a lot of people are going to be on Gary Barnidge with McCown coming back. Everybody and their mother on Twitter is looking at the splits of Barnidge with McCown and without McCown and seeing how his numbers just shoot up with McCown. I can understand the hype. I can understand why people are buying in and plugging him into their lineups, but I'm just not going to be touching it and just look for his ownership numbers to be really, really high.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't want to sniff the chalk. It's already up my nose with him, and that's what I was alluding to earlier. But he's in my lineup right now, so until I work him out of it. Jim, what do you have for this game? Was he frozen? All right, Brian, what do you got for this game?
All right, for this game, I really don't like much. I do like Mike Wallace. I think he proved week one and that he can be a viable option, and that Flacco loves to throw the deep ball. Everyone knows that. He loved Torrey Smith when he was there, and Mike Wallace shows he's still got some left in the tank. Cleveland doesn't really have anyone to cover him. You know, I like Mike Wallace, a big play kind of guy. And then I'm staying away from everything Browns except for maybe Gary Barnidge, only because McCown's coming back, like Ryan just said. But that's it. It's going to be a low-scoring affair. I would probably take the under, but even then, that's pretty risky.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Jim, you there for us?
Yes, sir.
All right, what do you got for this game?
For that game, I'm not really a Barnidge guy. Like you said, I think the ownership's going to be too high. I'm not really thrilled about him in the first place anyways. I want to see what he actually does with McCown this year before I go ahead and jump on the bandwagon. Other Browns, Duke Johnson is interesting, but not interesting enough to use, I don't think. I like him as a player, but DFS-wise, I just can't really get with him right now. As for the Ravens, I can agree with the Mike Wallace comment. I think he's clearly got the big playability, and now that he's matched up with a guy like Flacco with the big arm, you're going to see a much better season from him than you have in the last couple of years. So I wouldn't mind, checking him out for a GPP flyer. I think, he gets you that 60, 70-yard touchdown. It can make your day right there. Under the radar, ownership-wise guy, I think this week is Justin Forsett. Had a decent week one. I know he split time with Terrence West. I think Forsett was much more. Yeah, I think about 4 yards per carry on 10 or 12 carries. He had a couple catches. Against this Browns team, I wouldn't be shocked to see him have a decent week. 60, 70 rushing yards, call 3 or 4 catches. I could see him getting in the end zone. So I think as a tournament play, very low percentage, not a terrible idea. He's on my list. I'm not saying I'm going to use him, but he's definitely somebody that is on my radar. Otherwise, in that game, though, I'm not really too interested. So really, Forsett and Wallace are interesting, but nobody really set in stone.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much all the points that are made across the board. I'm looking at Flacco as my potential GPP play, and I probably would be pairing him up. I'd be dumb if not. Like I said, I don't hate the Barnidge play. If you're going to do it in cash, you just be ready for about 40 to 30 to 40% ownership, honestly, because there's not a lot to love at tight end, really. I also like the Ravens defense at 4.5. I don't think that's a bad option.
Yeah, that's another team I think on this week that's going to have a lot of chalk. The Ravens defense and then the Seattle defense too.
Yeah, and it's pretty much Baltimore is pretty much, as we found out from our group text earlier, Baltimore is like the chalk survivor play. They're my pick. I'm rolling with them for my survivor pick. I hope I'm not falling into a trap here, but Fucking Baltimore. Moving to the next game. Dallas at Washington. Over-under is 45.5, and Washington is favored by 3 here. I'm going to start off by saying it. You're going to play Witten. Go on ahead. Rookie quarterbacks like to go to their tight end. I like Witten. You can always play Jordan Reed at 7.4. You really can. I have no problem with that. I will not be probably. Dan Bailey, 4.7. That's a kicker you can rely on. Dez, here's a stat for you. He has 7 touchdowns against the Redskins, and that's his second most versus any team. At 7.7, that's kind of cheap for Dez, but I'm off the Dak train. I will not be playing Dak. I will not be playing Zeke this week. But if I have a pick in this game, it's Dallas +3. The Skins are 1-4 in the last 5 games playing the Cowboys. Dallas +3 kind of makes sense. I'm just off pretty much Zeke and Dak. I'm off those guys. I'm not going to be playing many Redskins guys. I don't really like playing Redskins guys at all. But if you like Witten, you like Dan Bailey, you like Dez, I got no problem with them. Brian, we'll start you off.
After the week 1, I'm so glad everyone relaxes on Dak now, and everyone sees that he really was not as good as, it was preseason. It was preseason football. But now that we're back in the regular season, I'm not as high on Dez as you are, especially after week 1. They're going to put Josh Norman on. They're going to bracket coverage him too. Nothing screams very good about that. I do like Chris Thompson in this. I think he is a viable option. Matt Jones did nothing that wowed anybody week 1, and the Redskins are going to have to throw a lot this year, and Chris Thompson is that back that they'll be throwing to. So I think if you really want a cheap option, you can go that route. Kirk Cousins a little bit, only because they're going to have to throw a lot too. And he really isn't that bad of a quarterback. I think he just had a rough week against the Steelers. So that's what I got for you.
Jim, what do you got for me?
This is a game I am completely avoiding in both sides of it. If for anybody who has seen my Twitter in the last couple weeks, I am a super hater of Dak. I understand the price tag, but people get just way too hyped up about preseason. It means something, but it doesn't mean what some people portray it to be. And just because he was dominating some second and third string and a bunch of guys who are sitting on their couch like we are right now doesn't impress me. So I'm glad to see everybody seems to be moving on from that. I have for Dez. I think he's in for a really down year if this is going to continue. I'm not sure if anybody heard Dak said, I'm not going to force the ball to Dez. Dez doesn't like to hear that. And when Dez gets in his whiny baby moods, things go bad in Dallas. So that's a team that I'm going to be avoiding. For season long, however, anybody in deep leagues, I think Cole Beasley is going to be a nice pickup for people in deeper leagues, 12 teams and more. I think he might be a guy who has some solid PPR value. For the Skins, nobody. Matt Jones did not impress. Cousins did not impress. The receivers are fine. I just think there's too many of them, and you're just rolling the dice each week who you're going to see. Garcon, Crowder, Reed. When Doxson comes back, there's just too much going on there. I think if one guy has a big week, the next guy, different guy, the next week, a different guy, and so on and so forth. So that game I'm going to be avoiding completely. And I'll get back up with those teams on another week. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. Ryan, conclude us here.
Pretty much just wrapped it up. Citing my the interesting stats from week 1, because week 2, as everybody already knows, is disproportionately based on week 1 every single year. If you're looking at last week's production from Dallas, Jason Witten had 14 targets for Dallas. Like, as you said, the Dak Prescott rookie check down essentially was just embodied with him. And then Cole Beasley also had massive target numbers. So Jason Witten is one of my tight end options that I'm looking to this week when I'm building my lineups along with Jesse James. You guys pretty much touched on everything. I am, however, I believe in Zeke this week. don't think I think that week one down week, I don't think that's going to last all year. That offensive line is just too good. We saw what D'Angelo Williams did last week, albeit kind of got to weight things, whether it was the fact that the Redskins defense was bad or the Patriots or the Steelers offense, my bad. It was just that good. And I think it's more the Steelers offense, but I still believe that Zeke can have a productive week. And I think that he can be a winning cash game pick. Everything else you guys said was spot on. I was really worried for a second that I was going to have to get into a really big debate about Dak Prescott. Thank none of you guys are head over heels for a 4th round rookie quarterback.
He did nothing to impress.
Exactly. In the preseason, they're not game planning essentially for a 4th round quarterback. Now they've game planned for how they're going to shut down Dak Prescott, because if you shut down Dak Prescott, then you probably shut down the Cowboys. So that 55% ownership in the big $2 double up on FanDuel was just absolutely absurd. I'm really happy I stayed away, and I'm staying away again.
Yeah, he's 7.0. He's more like a 6.2 in my opinion. I don't like Zeke at 7.9, and that's my final thought on this game. Moving to some fantasy goodness here. Everyone's going to be all over it, just which way you want to tackle it. New Orleans Saints going up to play the New York Giants. New York Giants are -4.5. We got a hefty over-under here at 53.5. Jim, start us off with your boys.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I don't know. You could go so many different ways in this game. Eli is probably going to be, I would say, the highest owned quarterback this week, just because of the price tag over Breeze, and obviously Breeze's difficulties on the road. Beckham, as I said before, is pretty hard to fade. He's a guy who dominated them last year, and he's going to dominate them again. I know their top corner's out this week, and if I heard it right, the remaining corners on their roster prior to week 1 have 0 NFL snaps. Get that, 0 snaps. So when you've got core with Beckham, Shepard, who's already impressing, Cruz, who I think a lot of people were surprised is actually back out there and doing a little bit. I think that offense is going to be moving the ball a lot. If they score less than 30, 35 points, I'll be shocked. So Beckham is certainly in play. Eli is certainly in play. I know some people have some interest in Rashad Jennings this week. I don't hate that. And Victor Cruz, tourney flyer at best, I think. For season long, I think he's an interesting flex play. And the spread, I'm definitely looking at that -4.5. We all know the Saints struggle on the road. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when they see the Giants' defense this year. They spent a lot of money, and they definitely added some nice pieces. The secondary with Rogers Cromartie, Janoris Jenkins, drafting Eli Apple. There's a lot of solid players on that defense, so I think the Saints receivers are going to be a little bit down. I think some people are going to be surprised at that one. So Giants -4.5 is certainly a very, very interesting bet. Most likely going to be nailing that one.
Yep. Brian, what do you got for me?
So I'm taking the over in this game for obvious reasons and basically everything that Jim just said. You gotta love basically everything but the defenses in this game, really. You're never gonna throw it all day. The Saints receiving core isn't as established, or for longevity reasons. After week 1, they have 2 of the best receivers in the league to some people, but I like just about everything about this game except for the defenses. So that's basically all I got.
Ryan, what do you got for me?
Pretty much just what's going to be breaking down the blackboard again with the chalk. It's going to be all over Eli Manning and Odell. I think both of them are definitely great options in cash games. I'm not fading either one of those. I'm not going contrarian and saying they're going to have awful weeks or anything like that. Also think Rashad Jennings is going to have a good week. The Saints allowed 3 rushing touchdowns last week. That cannot be forgotten in the midst of all of those passing yards and passing touchdowns and everything. Yeah, pretty much that's everything. I I will play devil's advocate with myself a little bit. I have Odell in lineups, and what I can say is if Odell has it down, pretty much looking at landscape of the season, if he has a down season, you can look to the reasons being more threats in the offense. Last year, he just didn't have the Sterling Shepard and Victor Cruz combos around him to take away the targets. Other than that, that's pretty much everything.
Yep. I love any wide receiver you want to try to get in. Any one or two guy, honestly. If it's a 3 or 4 receiver, toss them into GPP. Don't hate it. Have to pair it up with a QB, in my opinion, if you're doing that in a GPP. But Eli, one of my top QBs this week. And honestly, I don't think I'll end up starting Eli OBJ combo in my cash game. But I'm definitely going to have at least 2 parts to this game, undecided yet. But in my GPP, I'm definitely playing one of these 2 teams. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to throw it out there. Someone's throwing picks. Someone's throwing a pick here. I'm also leaning New Orleans plus 4.5. I'm not a big Giants believer this year. That's probably going to bite me in the ass. Yeah, I am a hater, big-time hater, but it's not one of my picks. It's kind of like leaning that way. I'm like, but you nailed it on the head. Drew Brees is not at nearly the same quarterback he is on the road. Moving on to a really gross game. I'd be shocked if any of you guys really have much to talk about this game. San Francisco at Carolina. Carolina minus 13.5, over 44.5. I love the Panthers D. Don't hate if you want to pay up and play for Olsen. And I was sneaky like Jeremy Curley on the 49ers. Other than that, I hate everything, and I'm leaning under. But for me, there's no fantasy goodness. Someone might win a GPP with a player from this game, but I'm looking at cash games here. Jim, start me off.
Yeah, you pretty much said it all. There's not a whole lot to like with this game. It's just a lot of bad going on. I was surprised to see the 49ers offense last week, but against Carolina this week, there's really not much to see there. The 13.5 is interesting if you're thinking the under. Big spreads like that are always tough. I usually don't go with them, but I always take a good hard look at that. Otherwise, fantasy-wise, DFS-wise, stay away.
Yep. You play your big names in your year-long one. In daily, be careful because, paying up for Greg Olsen at 7.6, he could get you 3 catches for 30 yards. He'll get you 7 catches, 120, and a touchdown. It's just don't hate if you want to play him, but he's obviously well-talented. Brian, you got anything for me for this game?
I like you said, I like Carolina's defense in this game, but that's about it. I would take the under if I was betting it. I don't think it'll be very high scoring. I think Cam's going to be a little banged up. He's going to be a little weary after the first week he had. But all in all, nothing really wows me about this game. Maybe Greg Olsen, maybe Kelvin Benjamin, but I'm really staying away from the 49ers. Carlos Hyde had a good first week, but the Carolina's defense is going to shut that down very quickly.
I hate Carlos Hyde. Ryan, finish us off.
Nothing really to like here at all. I think Cam Newton might be an option if you're feeling riskier and you want to go. The guy who's going to be lower owned in large double up or anything of that nature in cash game. Other than that, there's no real options for me in this game. We can go ahead and move on.
Yep. All right. Next game we have here, Kansas City at Houston. Houston is favored by 2.5 here. Over under 43.5. I love the over in this game. I love it, love it, love it. 43.5. A little too small for me, not a big enough number. I like Lamar Miller at 7.7. I think he's going to be a top 3 at the end of the year, total rushing yards and at the end of the season. I don't hate Alex Smith. He's such a better road quarterback than he is a home quarterback. And at 7,000, I don't hate the value you're going to get out of him in the GPP. Same with Kelsey. You can play either kicker in this game, in my opinion. And I don't hate anyone from this game. I'm just going to be that guy that sticks my foot in the mud and says I'm not playing Spencer Ware. Jim, do you have anything against what I just said?
No, not really. I'm pretty much right on board with you in that game. All around, honestly.
Yeah, there's so many players you could pick from that they're decent in cash game. This game's going to go over, in my opinion. The Houston offense is way more up-tempo than it has been in the past. The Brock Lobster is going to be a decent quarterback this year. I hate to say it, but if you want to toss him out there in a GPP, I don't hate it. I love Lamar Miller. Alex Smith is all right. Stay away from all Chiefs receivers. That's a duh. Kelsey 6.3, not bad. And I don't hate if you're going to play any of the Texans wide receivers, named Will Fuller or DeAndre Hopkins. Ryan, what do you got for me? Actually, Brian, what do you got for me?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm as high on Brock as you are, and I'm staying away from Alex Smith. Alex Smith had a great week 1, but Houston's defense is far better than San Diego, so I'm staying far away from him. I actually don't mind Jeremy Maclin. I didn't think he'd be very good week 1, but he still came to play. So he's the only guy I would roll with from Kansas City. For Houston, like you said, you can roll with your Will Fuller, your DeAndre Hopkins. I don't mind Lamar Miller because of his pass catching abilities in this, and I am definitely taking the over with you. Other than that, that's all I got. Like I said, though, but Brock Osweiler is not going to have that good of a year.
He's a gun. He just likes to throw the ball deep, and he's got 2 guys that'll do it. Ryan, you don't have anything to conclude it?
Nah, there's nothing really for me in this game that I'm liking for DFS purposes. You guys pretty much touched on everything with Lamar Miller potentially being a good running back for full season in this game. Could bode well for him than the obvious options. I don't really have anything else that hasn't been noted.
Gotcha. Another kind of game that I'm not really looking too much, the over-under is disgusting. Seattle, I see them at -7 now. That line jumped a lot recently at the Los Angeles Rams. Over-under I saw was 39.5. Gross, yuck, disgusting. Can't hate Baldwin. You can't hate the Seattle defense. And honestly, I don't hate the Rams defense either. Other than that, I hate this game. I hate the Seattle running back situation. Todd Gurley's not going to get anything going in this game. Russell Wilson is all nicked up unless this concussion water he has makes him all better. Then I don't see him doing anything. I do have Seattle -3.5 though. Or excuse me, I actually don't have that anymore. When it was at 3.5, I wanted them. Now it's -7. I don't want them. Ryan, you got anything for this game?
No, not really. I think just people take for granted what Doug Baldwin has done since the start of last season without Marshawn Lynch in the lineup, as he obviously is not anymore. He scores around 19 points in a FanDuel setting. I think that people just forget about that, and I think he can be a serious cash play any week.
Jim, what do you got for me?
Offensively, not a big fan of anyone on either team. The defenses are both intriguing for sure, and to be honest, that Rams +7 is interesting because it might be 10-6. That game last week for Seattle, barely sneaking by the Dolphins, and Wilson's banged up. I could see the Rams defense stepping up from last week after that debacle. And I could see it being a real low-scoring game. The under and the +7 are interesting to me. And like I said, on the DFS side, the defense is otherwise I'm a no-go.
Yep. Brian, finish us off here.
If Russell Wilson was healthy, I would be more interested. But a banged-up Russell Wilson, not impressed in week 1. I'm staying away from everything about this game.
All right. Moving on to the next game. Tampa Bay at Arizona. Arizona -6.5, over under 51. I love Roberto Aguayo, the kicker, 4.5, cheap. Going to be a lot of points in this game. I like Larry Fitzgerald at 7.4. Don't, if you're going to play him, go for it. Not a bad value. Mike Evans, I think he's in for a huge year this year, 8.1. Don't hate it. Doug Martin, 7.1. I want him to be like 6.7, to be honest with you. Until they show me that they're going to give him the ball more and more and, establish the run first. Until then, I'm going to stay away from him. I hate David Johnson at 9.0. I'm not paying for that. I hate paying up at running back, and I'm leaning the over in this game. Brian, what do you got for me?
I'm with you. I'm a huge Mike Evans believer. And even against Arizona, I still think he's going to have a great game. He's just an absolute beast of a wide receiver. I'm not that high on Jameis Winston. Against Arizona's defense, I think that's a drastic change from Atlanta's. So, if it's going to hit Jameis Winston very quickly, especially. So, yeah, I'd stay away from him. I do like Arizona's wide receivers outside of Michael Floyd, who's really the only guy who did much of anything. Well, obviously Larry Fitz, but outside of Larry Fitz that did anything in the week one. John Brown could have a good bounce back week. I'm not that high on Aguayo. I know he's a cheap option, but he was a little sketchy in preseason and good in preseason. I'm not rolling with him until he proves after a few weeks that he can be consistent.
That's fair. Jim, anything for this?
Larry Fitzgerald, I really like him at 7,400. Just watching him last week, he just puts on a show. He's just such a professional. I mean, some of those catches, he's just plucking them out of the air with his fingertips. Palmer puts it anywhere near him, he's going to grab it. I see this as a great game to work on the over, as a couple of you guys mentioned. I think that's pretty close to a lock. So I think Fitzgerald's going to have a big part of that. David Johnson, again, hate that price, just way too much. And Brown and Floyd are just too much of a toss-up for me. You just never know which is going to do what. So I'm going to avoid those two. On the other side, I'm not a Jameis fan either. I think Mike Evans has a big season. However, a monster DFS week. I think I'll have a solid game, but I'm not expecting anything crazy. I like Doug Martin. I agree. I think his price was a little bit lower. I'd be all over him, but he's kind of on the fringe of do I do it? Do I not? Do I not? He's probably going to end up not making it into the roster. Otherwise, for that game, I'm going to be avoiding the rest.
Ryan, finish us off here.
Here, pretty much what my thoughts are is I like David Johnson. He proved to me last week that he can do it pretty much in any circumstance. He didn't run for a ton of yards, but he still finished with 133 yards from scrimmage in the score. To be honest, he just solidified to me that season long he's going to finish as the number one running back in fantasy, and that he, well, not matchup proof, but he's going to find ways even in the bad matchups to put up points, whether it be through the screen game or finding the end zone when they need him to. Honestly, I think he's a cash option. His price is high, so you'd have to find some serious value elsewhere. Maybe Jesse James at a tight end, and then maybe if you have individually like some gut favorite at wide receiver for a low price, then you could fit him in. But then even then, the 9.1 is still a lot to pay for a guy who really doesn't have the upside of, say, a 9-point, like a mid-9 wide receiver or mid to low 9 wide receiver like Odell or Julio.
Yep, I agree with you there. Moving on to the next game, we got to run through these quickly. I love this game, though. Jacksonville at San Diego. I see San Diego -3, over under 47. Love the over. That's one of my picks here. I love Danny Woodhead. I like either kicker. I like Antonio Gates. There's chalk dust everywhere with Travis Benjamin. If you want to pair up any QB wide receiver combo in this game, I'm not going to hate it at all. I'm a big Bortles fan. I like Allen Robinson. I like Allen Hurns. Don't like Julius Thomas. Don't like any of the defense in this game. It's going to be a shootout. But with Keenan Allen out, we saw Travis Benjamin get I want to say it was 8 targets right off the back. Danny Woodhead is going to get even more action in the passing game, and I think it's 6.4. You're dumb not to play him in cash game, in my opinion. I think that's my lock of the week. Jim, what do you got for me for this game?
For this one, I like Allen Robinson a lot. I own him on both my season-long leagues, and I think this week he has a big night. He got peppered with targets last week, so that's obviously encouraging. It just didn't really work out too well. As of right this moment, from what I'm looking, I actually have Beckham, Robinson, and Larry Fitz, 3 guys that we've already talked about. I think that just brings immense upside. I think this is going to see some points in this game.
Looks like you just cut out.
Well, all right, Brian, what do you got for me in this Jacksonville-San Diego game?
Well, based off of what he said, I'm with Allen Robinson. I mean, he didn't have a great week one, but I think he has a huge bounce back week this week. Oh, wow, words are hard to come by these days. But Ty Williams is an interesting look in this one. and so is Travis Benjamin. Like you said, Philip Rivers is going to throw the ball. He's going to throw a lot. A lot of it's going to go to Woodhead, but outside of that, he's got to find a receiver. So those two guys are interesting, especially with what Travis Benjamin did last year with Cleveland. I think he could show big with a better quarterback.
Ryan, finish us off here.
Yeah, pretty much everything's been touched on. Breaking down the blackboard one more time, we got Travis Benjamin here. Everybody and their mothers looking to him to replace Keenan Allen's production. Like you mentioned it. I think the exact number, I looked it up. It was in my stat article on the website on settingtheedge.weebly.com. Travis Benjamin, following Keenan Allen going down in the 2-minute warning, or right around the 2-minute warning, had 7 targets from there on out. Those are just big numbers that everybody and their mother looking at that likes, and everybody's going to be plugging him into their lineup. I believe he's at 6.1 on FanDuel. And pretty much just everything that's been said all around is spot on to me. One of my picks for this week, I'm extremely confident in the Jacksonville. They're underdogs in this game. Last I saw it was at +3 for them. I really, really like that. They looked good against Green Bay. They just didn't have enough to get it done at the end. Went for it on a lot of 4th downs and got it. San Diego, after Keenan Allen went down, they just were not good. They were up big in the first half. I looked at that game, saw that I picked the Chiefs in my massive parlay that I'll get into at the end that just pisses me off thinking about it. I saw the Chiefs down that much in the first half and just mailed it in. I was like, all right, well, they're done. Keenan Allen goes down. I don't think it's a coincidence that once Keenan Allen went down, they crumbled.
Yep. I'll be playing Danny Woodhead, as I mentioned. That's my lock of the week. I don't want to suck up all the chalk dust on Travis Benjamin, but at 6.1, you're getting good value. It lets you pay for Eli Manning, OBJ, and players like Brandon Cooks in those big, high over-under games. Over 47, I have it locked in right now, and I kind of like the Jags +3 as well. I might play that like closer to game time, but stay tuned at my Twitter account, @VaughnR16. Next game up, we got to move through these. Hopefully Jim will be able to return to us. We got Atlanta visiting Oakland. I see Oakland -5.5. It's probably -4.5 now on some sites. Over under 49.5. I like Matt Ryan. I like Amari Cooper. I like Crabtree. I like Julio. I like Mohamed Sanu. And I like Tammy as well. If there's one player I hate, welcome back, Jim. If there's one player I hate from this game, and I'm sure we're all going to talk about him briefly here, Devontae Freeman. I'm off. I'm not even going to toss him in the tournament. I'm just not on it. Jim, tell me more about why you hate Devontae Freeman.
What? Looks like the screen's black.
All right, Ryan, tell me how much you hate Devontae Freeman.
Devontae Freeman, Jim and I discussed this on Twitter. Anybody who wants to go back and look through our little exchange in our replies and such. Since I believe he had week 13-ish, he just hasn't been good. Here, Jim's back. You want to touch on the Devontae Freeman numbers?
Oh, Devonta Freeman sucks. What a bum. I was talking about him all day today on Twitter. So many people got wrapped up in his fantasy numbers because he was catching passes out of the backfield, but rushing numbers-wise, absolutely. I mean, he was running for, I think it was from week 10 of last year to the end of the season. He was 110 carries for 300 yards. He had a couple really, really atrocious weeks. He had a 12-carry, 12-yard game in week 9. 25 carry, 56-yard game in week 15. He's just not looking very impressive, and I really expect Coleman to take a bigger piece of that pie every week going forward. I would be very upset if I spent a first-round pick on Devonta in season long. I think you would have had to be foolish to do so. And DFS-wise, he's just a no-go for me for the remainder of the season. I won't even speak his name unless it's something negative, promise.
Yeah.
Otherwise, in that game, I'm not really looking at anybody. Sanu was interesting, but with the injury, however minor it may have been, that just kind of pushed me away from that one. Julio, the same way. I believe he was banged up a little bit. So I'll be avoiding paying up for him this week. It's just a little too rich for my blood for
Yep.
was on the docket. So, Matt Ryan, I know. We'll go to the other side. Derek Carr has definitely a lot of value this week. I think a stack with him and Cooper could be plentiful and really get you some serious points. Latavius Murray does not interest me. He's been a little bit disappointing, so I'm going to avoid him again. And I think a lot of people hopped off the Clive train, so regardless of price, I don't want to dive down that low. I can't deal with a 2-point showing, no matter what the price tag is. So I'm going to avoid him, and that's it for me on that game.
Gotcha. Yep, I agree with you here. We're going to keep the ball rolling here. The battle of the horses. We have the Colts at the Broncos. I see the Broncos minus 6.5 right now. Wouldn't be surprised if that line moves up. Over under 46.5. Don't hate the kickers in this game. I like Denver's defense. I like C.J. Anderson. I think he's the quote-unquote blackboard chalk play at 7.8. And I don't hate Trevor Siemian at 6.4. If he gets you 15 points, great, awesome, perfect. Because you're going to need other guys to step up. You're going to need that extra value elsewhere to pay for those wide receivers. I hate Andrew Luck this week at 8.5. That offensive line stinks. Denver's going to be in his grill all game. I hate Frank Gore, and I hate T.Y. Hilton. And if I'm leaning anywhere on this game, I'm leaning under 46.5. Ryan, got anything good for me for this game?
This game, just breaking down where the chalk is, you brought up C.J. Anderson. Indianapolis' defense just got trashed by Detroit in week 1. By a lot of advanced metrics, they were the worst defense, even worse than the Oakland defense or the Saints defense. That's really, I'm looking at him in cash game. I'm plugging him in my lineups, and I'm going to roll with that. Other than that, I don't really have too much from this game. But C.J. Anderson is another blackboard chalk name, as you mentioned.
Yep. Jim, got anything good for me here?
Pretty similar on all accounts. The only one that I don't believe was mentioned that I'm been looking at all day long was Emmanuel Sanders at 6,700. With Thomas dealing with the hip, it wouldn't surprise me to see Sanders do a little bit of work out there. I could see him busting off a long one. So he's an interesting wide receiver 3 for me at 6,700. I don't expect a ton of ownership there. So he's really the only guy outside of everything you guys have already said that has any interest for me.
Yep. And what's cool about Emmanuel Sanders games, you know within the first 6 plays whether or not he's going to have a great game or a bad game. Just watching the Broncos either gets the ball right off the back and it's his game, or he doesn't get the ball at all, and then you're really pissed off. That's where I stood last week. In my year-long fantasy leagues, I had him in like 4 leagues. He fell to me real late, and I was excited. But anything else out of that game, I don't see much interest in it. We're going to move on to the next game, Sunday night game, Green Bay at Minnesota. I see Minnesota +2 right now, over under 43.5. Not much to love here. But if there's anyone I don't hate, Randall Cobb. I don't hate Randall Cobb. And if I'm picking anything, I got Green Bay -2. Brian, got anything for me for this game?
I mean, I love Rodgers, but that's an obvious kind of thing. You have to
goes without saying.
Yeah, exactly. You have to love Cobb. After week 1, Jordy showed up and he played okay, but the stats weren't there to back it up. Stay away from AP. He did not impress at all. That offensive line looked like an absolute mess in week 1. And it's not a very pretty game overall.
Yeah, this isn't going to be as pretty as the games we had hoped for from this season from these 2 teams. Jim, is there any fantasy goodness in this game that you see that we don't see?
No, fantasy-wise, I'm not interested at all. I do really like that Packers -2, though. I think that's going to be for sure for me. I'm going to lock that one in most likely as soon as we get off here.
Yep. Yeah, I might.
Fantasy-wise, though, not interested.
Yep. And as we talked earlier, Ryan, you don't really have many plays for this game either. Not something that we're looking at here. But to conclude the show here, last game we have the Eagles at the Bears. Such a disappointing Monday night game, personally. I have a couple players I like from this game. I like Langford at 6.5. He seems to be getting a lot of consensual love across the industry here. I don't mind Jordan Matthews at 6.9, LOL. And I don't hate Alshon Jeffrey at 7.8 with the amount of targets that he's going to have to see. I don't know if you guys are Jay Cutler guys or not. I like Jay Cutler personally. Won't ever play him in daily, but he will blow up and have a great game, get Jeffrey a ton of yards. I don't see why not right now. Vegas loves the Bears. They're -3 right now. Over-under is 42.5. I hate the tight ends in this game. But if I'm picking anything, I'm going to pick Alshon Jeffrey or Langford. Only one Eagles player allowed per team for me. I'm not going to. I can't do it physically. But if I'm leaning any side, I'm leaning Bears because I thought Eagles would be favored in this game, and they're not, and therefore I'm just going to go with Vegas on this one. Fly, Eagles, fly. Right, Ryan? What do you got for me?
Looking throughout this game, I'm going to be a little bit contrarian to what you said. I'm going to speak against that. I'm not really a big fan of Langford this week. The Eagles' front seven has really impressed me from the beginning of last year. It's looked good with Fletcher Cox up in the front, like just anchoring that defensive line. And then just surrounding him, the pieces have gradually gotten better. Thin at linebacker, albeit, but at the top of the depth chart, they are pretty strong. And then that Jim Schwartz defense, I like it a lot. Like you mentioned, Jordan Matthews, I'm looking at him to get a lot of targets again this week, especially with Zach Ertz out with his displaced rib. I'm definitely, I'll be tuned into this one, whether it was Monday night or whether it was middle of the Sunday, 1 o'clock. This would be the game I would be watching. I'm a diehard Eagles fan. And I hope we can pull this one out. Not really sure, though.
Vegas seems to not be giving you guys any credit here. Jim, anything out of this game you like?
I like Matthews, like you both said. I think he's going to have himself a pretty big game. That's Jordan Matthews and Langford. I like Langford to put up some pretty solid numbers at 6,500. He's not a bad RB2. I could see him putting up somewhere around 15, 16 points for you at that price, which isn't too bad. But otherwise, I'm pretty much staying away. Alshon, I'm going to keep my eye on and see how he does this week, but not just yet.
Another guy I forgot to mention I'm kind of looking at here for pretty decent value, Ryan Matthews at 6.3. According to the coaches, they're going to be looking to feed him the ball and really set the tone, quote-unquote. He's a really powerful running back. If he can stay healthy, he's going to be solid. I'm sort of looking at him in cash, but I just am afraid of playing him all the time. He's just going to get hurt. Brian, do you have anything to conclude this game?
The only name I would keep an eye on and possibly consider is Eddie Royal. Him and Jay Cutler have good history together, and it showed week 1 too. So, that would be something I would keep an eye on. But
I remember when Eddie Royal went off in San Diego for a bit, and then he's over here, and he's all over the place, but not bad tournament flyer. But that concludes talking about all the daily fantasy stuff, gambling stuff, year-long stuff here on the Setting the Edge podcast. Ryan Zammo, give me your ending rant here that you've been waiting and holding all show here, and then we'll plug all our Twitters, plug all our accounts and everything, and get the ball rolling on out of here.
All right, I'm going to keep this short and sweet. Going into week 1, I wanted to have some fun with week 1 NFL, and so I looked at the slate of games, and it all seemed pretty certain to me, except for a few glaring games that I stayed away from. So I was like, all right, I'll put down 50 cents on a parlay. This parlay was to win $95, 50 cents for 95. I picked, I think ended up being 13 games. I go through the day. I pick Philadelphia against Cleveland. I pick Green Bay against Jacksonville. I stayed away from the Buffalo-Baltimore game. Didn't have a great read on that one. Picked Houston against Chicago. Tampa Bay is the dog against Atlanta. Minnesota, Cincinnati, Oakland, Kansas City, Seattle, Detroit. I stayed away from the Detroit game, rather. Picked the New York Giants. And then Sunday Night Football, I picked the Arizona Cardinals. So going throughout the day, you already know that parlay lost, but going throughout the day, I go through the 1 o'clock games, and I sweat all of them out. I see that Kansas City's down by 17 at half, and I just mail that one in. Then they come back and win that for me. I mail it in on Oakland when I see they're down 14 with 5 minutes left. I mail that one in. They go for 2 and win the game. So I watch all these shenanigans unfold. I watch Terrence Williams not realize that the white line on the side of the field stops the clock. So I'm going into the Sunday night game, and I'm like, oh my God, I have 50 cents. I'm going to win $95. And then Chandler Catanzaro has solidified himself as the only person on this planet that I despicably hate. Watching that field goal was the most excruciating thing in my life. And now I'm here with two Patriots fans talking about it.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, we were texting back and forth, and I was like, dude, I don't know, man. Like, Patriots, like, +9 seems a little sketchy. And then they just don't even, like, win the game. But
Kicker's going for the game-winning kick against the Pats. Not too well. Does not go over too well.
Never. Lucky.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Catastanzo or whatever is terrible from anything over like 40 yards. So I wasn't shocked as soon as they showed that stat. He was like 1 of 5 from like 45 plus, and I was like, oh, this scrub's gonna fucking miss this.
That's exactly how it played out. I'll wait till the Sunday night game to ruin it.
Yeah, exactly. Seriously, you're antsy all day. You got games flying all over the place. But that concludes the Setting the Edge podcast, Week 2 NFL preview. So make sure you go ahead and follow all of our accounts here. Thank you again, Jim, for joining us here. We'd love to have you on as much as possible. He is at Jim Dean King on Twitter. Make sure you follow him. He gives great advice and picks for daily fantasy lineups across the industry. Any final words for yourself, Jim?
No, like you said, thanks for having me. Glad to jump on. Hoping to do it again in the near future. Anybody feel free to message me if you're looking for lineups. I have a subscription service, King's Court. I've been going for a couple years strong now. So feel free to direct message me. I'm always available. And thanks again, guys.
Absolutely. From Brian Gauthier 7 over there in the Post 75 shirt to the great Zambino over in the Eagles shirt, Devon R12 in the Post 75 hat. So happened to be me and Brian wearing our old American Legion baseball uniform right now. Make sure you go ahead and follow the podcast at SettingTheEdge_ on Twitter. Make sure you follow us on YouTube at Setting the Edge. Make sure you check out our website at settingtheedge.weebly.com and check us out on SoundCloud if you can't watch the video and you want to listen to a podcast. SoundCloud.com/setting-the-edge69.
Marshall's knee is broken. Fuck.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
That's
Jesus.
Oh,
I just turned off the Twitter feed a second ago. But that concludes everything here. Sorry to spoil of anything, but oh my Lord, that looks terrible. See you, fellas. I'm going to get this stuff uploaded, and best of luck on all your bets, daily fantasy lineups, and year-long lineups. Deuces.